There is an urgent need to change U.S. foreign policy because the world of today is very different than the world when U.S. foreign policy that we are currently using, primacy, was adopted after the end of the Cold War. At the end of the Cold War, the United States was unquestionably the dominant power militarily and economically by a wide margin. There are far more constraints. There are far more limits on American power, both internally and externally. There are many more capable actors around the world, not just adversaries and bad actors, but also allies and partners are much more capable. So we have many more options. The world is much more resilient today than it was 25 or 30 years ago because of these capable actors. Once we've sort of accepted the need for change, and it sort of is a change of mindset, it's not a military first approach, it's not even leaning as heavily on military dominance as sort of the core, we have to elevate diplomacy relative to the military. It includes things as simple as having diplomats present in most parts of the world, which we aren't. We need to take seriously U.S. economic power. U.S. economic power does not flow from military power. It is not a condition of U.S. military power. Our economy is still the largest in the world. It is still very dynamic. It is growing. It is the envy of the rest of the world. We don't use it very well. We try to use it as an instrument of coercion. We try to threaten people by cutting off access to U.S. markets or by punishing them with things like sanctions. It doesn't have a very good track record, and it's likely to become less effective over time. A U.S. foreign policy that prioritizes security, prosperity, and freedom for the American people must avoid great power war. Great power war would be such an enormous threat to the security of the United States, the prosperity of the American people, our continued independence and sovereignty. So this is a critical component of any grand strategy. In our current environment, this sounds hard, right? We are locked into this competition with China. It's multifaceted. It's not just military, it's economic, it's cultural. And so building an atmosphere of trust is part of that approach. Sort of reducing the likelihood of great power war starts with identifying areas of common interest where the United States and China in particular can work together. Climate change is one of the obvious ones. Infectious disease is another one. And trade is conducive to that kind of cooperation. Trade allows trading partners to identify common interests, otherwise they wouldn't be trading with one another. Through those identification of common economic interests, you have a space for talking about other common interests that involve avoiding war, avoiding conflict, avoiding things that disrupt those mutually beneficial economic relationships. We need to become a magnet for the world's talent. We were once upon a time. Many people still want to come to this country, but we've sent a message to a lot of folks that they're really not welcome here. And I think ultimately that is to our detriment as a society, and it also means that it's going to be harder for us to compete internationally because those folks will go somewhere else, and we want them to come here. At least that's the logic of U.S. foreign policy and has been for 200 plus years. More recently, again, we've been sending mixed messages with respect to whether or not people should be invited and encouraged to come to the United States to set up businesses, to create opportunities for themselves and their families. We need to be that magnet of world's talent again.